Hey folks, this is Dr. Tay, and today I want to talk about this article 8-hour time restricted eating linked to a 91% higher risk of cardiovascular death, and it was published on March 18th, 2024, by the American Heart Association in Epidemiology and Prevention Lifestyle and Cardiometabolic Health Scientific Session in 2024. So this drops as a bomb to the intermittent fasting community, aka time restricted eating. And basically, this research shows that over a 20,000 adults in a 8-hour time restricted eating, they had a 91% higher risk of death from cardiovascular disease. And I find this super shocking because the way I understand the human body as a um, healthcare provider in the greater New York. This goes up against everything that I know about health and how fasting helps the human body. Now, there are lab rats studies that I've read from Dr. Anna Maria Cuervo on autophagy over the years, plus reading Dr. Jason Fung's Bible on intermittent fasting, and many forth. And in those books and resources, there's tremendous amount of research backing this data up. And all of a sudden, a news article from the American Heart Association publishes an article that says 8-hour time restricted eating linked to a 91% higher risk of cardiovascular disease. This is tremendously shocking. Now, once again, if you're watching this video and you're thinking about doing intermittent fasting, please consult your doctor or your healthcare provider. Just don't do it by yourself, watching a bunch of YouTube videos. You want these things to, for the average American in general who is overweight, this is more somewhat safe for people to do it. I never say, just jump into doing a 72-hour fast. I worked my way to doing a 72-hour fast. And this article has a lot of holes because it's tied to this article, right? Where I'm going to read this out. At a recent American Heart Association conference, findings from a study on over 20,000 adults in the US across 8 years were shared. People who limited eating to 8 hours daily had a 91% higher risk of cardiovascular death. For those with an eating window of over 8 but less than 10 hours, the risk rose by 66% compared to those without time restrictions. If confirmed by other studies, intermittent fasting could pose health risks. But, okay, this is where it gets interesting. But this study has yet to be published in a scientific journal or even peer reviewed by other experts. Limited details about the studies are available, which appear to have significant limitations. So, why would they publish this article? And that leads to a lot of, I would say, conspiracy theories and just a lot of guesses of why people would want to do this, right? I guess is to confuse the public and prevent people from doing things like this because it might actually affect their health in a positive way. Um, and let's leave that to um, your own um, eh, your own conclusions. Okay, draw your own conclusions. All right, and on March 22nd, from WebMD, is intermittent fasting bad for your health? What to know, right? And they go over all the stuff over here. And I really like this guy, Dr. Christopher Gardner. And basically, those conclusions, he's talking about the same article that we just read, those conclusions are premature and misleading, says Christopher Gardner, a PhD, a professor of medicine at Stanford University and director of nutritional studies at the school's Prevention Research Center, who commented on an abstract of the study for the AHA news released before studies were presented in Chicago. Gardner tells WebMD that people in the study who consumed all their food in a daily window of 8 hours or fewer had a higher percentage of men, African Americans, and smokers, and they had a higher body mass index than those who ate over longer time spans, any of which could raise a group's disease risk. Also, the investigators lacked data on shift work, stress, and other variables, including the important element of the quality of the nutrition in their diet, which alone might have provided another explanation, he says. So, if you play like look at the study and really look at what questions were asked, what data was pulled. And basically, when I ask my patients about their nutrition, I ask them, what do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for lunch? What do you eat for dinner? What do you snack on? And what do you drink for fluids? And most oftentimes, people are not even drinking the correct amount of water. And I've been beating this horse to the death, is that you have to drink half of your body weight in terms of ounces. And hydration is tied in to water being structured and also having minerals into your water, whether it's salt, magnesium, and other trace minerals. Because when you drink filtered water, you pee out a lot of contents that your body really needs. Now, this is another study on intermittent fasting. This was published in 2021. And basically, people who have gone through this protocol for about a year, eating 8 hours in a time restricted eating protocol, and that the conclusions of the study was that our results suggest that long-term time restricted eating combined with a resistance training program is feasible, safe, and effective in reducing inflammatory markers like interleukin and risk factors related to cardiovascular and metabolic disease. So, this is a peer reviewed journal that has been published, and this doesn't go into scrutiny. I wonder why the study did not make it to the American Heart Association, and the other one did. And it was published without peer review. Um, and it just boggles the mind. Um, yeah, it really boggles the mind. Now, the only time that I would think time restricted eating might serve as a risk for heart disease, you have to understand that if you're a very skinny person or you have bulimia or anorexia and you're having these disorders and then attempting to because that's not healthy, right? In the event somebody doesn't have a lot of body fat percentage or visceral fat rating. Visceral fat rating is a fancy word for fat around your organs. And if you have a lot of not enough fat in your organs or in your body, and you're fasting on top of that, guess what? Your body is catabolizing your muscles from your arms, your legs, and in the worst case scenario, is taking muscle cells from your heart so that you have energy to go on. Now, if this happens, this creates like permanent damage in your heart because it's really hard to grow heart cells again unless you exercise. So, if you guys seen those survival videos where people get dropped off in the middle of north of Canada, close to the Arctic area where it's really cold, yeah, people start losing a lot of weight because they're not able to gain enough calories to survive a certain amount of time over there. And basically, they get a health checkup, and if they lose too much body fat percentage, they force them to quit. That would pose a one good example of why intermittent fasting would cause some sort of heart risk if you're really skinny. And the fact that the sample size had people with higher risk of cardiovascular disease, which I think is a good sample. They should have done it more, but they should have done like blood samples before and after to show how their blood work changed for the better. So, uh, if you're concerned about that article from the American Heart Association, you really got to put some, good thinking cap on and use logic and look at the data. The overwhelming data that supports intermittent fasting and time restricted eating is healthy for humans animals, and the sample size of the biohacking community that are doing this on a consistent basis is pretty much like well established. But once again, consult your doctor, your healthcare provider before attempting to do any of these things again. All right, until next time, take care.